Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for the SLMA radio show. If it has to do with sales lead management or sales lead marketing, it probably starts here with the SLMA radio show. And today, as always, we're privileged to have with us the man behind the mask. Multiple masks today here. The man who's put the whole show together and the whole network together. The man who started the SLMA many years ago. Jim Overmary. Jim.
Hello, Paul. You cracked me up there.
Good. I got you once here. Usually you're wearing...
People don't know we can see each other. We have a lot of fun trying before it starts to see who can make the other person laugh and what have you. How's the new studio, Paul?
The new studio is slowly coming along. In my virtual Zoom background, I have an Envision studio, but right now it looks like an Army field hospital. There's wires hanging everywhere and bags of blood, and it's messy right now here, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
UC Irvine?
UC Irvine. It's quite a big step for us. We've been brought into the UCI Applied Innovation Center, which is a new 100,000 square foot space where they want to bring research and technology that the campus is developing to life, mostly biomedical stuff.
And we've got a meeting space there, too.
We got a meeting space. We've got also, we got a double our space. We're going to have like a full TV studio here, and it's going to be quite an impressive thing once it's all done at the new UCI Beale Applied Innovation Center. Go check it out.
How many people does the meeting center hold?
Well, understand that this used to be Broadcom's world headquarters, so there's 3 floors here. And on the first floor, it's all giant meeting spaces. They want this to be the TED Talks of Orange County, where everybody gathers and hangs out and has their conferences and events in the whole world of startups and mostly, again, biotech, but gaming, defense, all the industries that are big here in Orange County. You go look it up online. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. It's a giant wraparound screen. It's not a series of screens. And it'll hold 300 people or so at the event space. And then they have lesser ones, a smaller one that has outdoor patio and barbecues and all this stuff for everybody wants to have their conferences online as well as outdoors. We'll live stream from there. We'll do stuff. And then go on down. They have classroom spaces all the way down to small meetups here on the floor that we're in. We're on the same floor as esports. Don't practice basketball anymore, Jim. Don't tell your neighbors' kids to go out and practice their baseball. Practice their video game skills. Because UC Irvine, you can get a full ride scholarship to be on their varsity level esports program here, which is what I think your guest was on. He was a varsity esports player here.
Yeah, he's been on a lot of things. One last question. So all of our hosts on the Funnel Radio Channel, 1314 programs,
yes,
they can have meetings there, can't they?
They can have
your tutelage.
Yes, and in fact, we're going to pioneer how to do what I think some of the things you're going to talk about today. How do you shift to online stuff here? Just as we do online radio, more and more people are going to either have actual events or we're going to stream events from here. It's all part of why they brought us in here to tell the story and to pioneer. We're sort of the media lab part of this whole thing here.
And Darryl Praill is one of the hosts, one of our most successful programs, Inside Sales. Now, the title of our program today is Without a Sales Engagement Platform, CRM is just a database. Darryl didn't think of this. He didn't come up with this title. I asked him to address it today. Now, most sales managers believe that a CRM system is all they need to manage prospects and customer expectations. However, sales engagement software solves the salesperson human issue, which hampers CRM success. Now, I ran sales leakage consulting for 22 years. I literally was the sales manager for probably 50 to 70 companies through those years. And I had some of the same problems at just about every place. How do you get the salespeople to comply to the CRM system? How do you get them to use it to its fullest capabilities? But the real problem was the CRM system wasn't powerful enough to overcome the salesperson's hesitation to use it and use it effectively. Where sales engagement, I got so excited with VanillaSoft, which is Darryl's company that he's CRO for, because it overcomes these human hesitations. It's a software product that helps the salespeople. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at VanillaSoft, industry's most established sales engagement platform. I've been tracking them for 11 years, and I know they're older than that. He's an accomplished award-winning marketer, Sales World Top 50 keynote speaker, 2020 top SaaS branding expert. He's got a long list of stuff. He's raised almost $100 million in venture capital, acquired, merged, and taken companies public. He's been hired and fired and worked for companies of all sizes. Praill is the host of the very popular podcast Inside Sales. Darryl, thank you for making time today to address this subject.
Okay, Jim, we need to talk. You said, what do you mean? You said I was one of the most successful podcasts. Are you suggesting that there's another show I have to take down on your network? Is that what you're saying to me?
You've got one you've got to chase, and that's Matt Hines' program. Now, he's been up a couple of years longer, but you're closing in on him. You are really closing in on him.
Summer. I had a meeting with Hines this morning. I'll talk to that guy. I'll take care of it.
I love it.
Hey, Darryl, I just want to know, is it true that you really are a big esports program? Because we're at UC Irvine's new Applied Innovation Center, and a huge part of this building is devoted to esports. Is that something you're into here?
It's not. My son is. My son's actually a sports journalist, but and I'm a sports enthusiast. But it's not something I get into. In fact, true story. You get to a certain point and you say, I need a hobby that's not work. And I had bought a Nintendo Switch thinking I would revisit my glory years. I owned it for about a year. I might have turned it on 3 times, and then I recently sold it to buy myself a drone because I said that hobby's not working. So I can appreciate esports, but it's just not something I myself get into.
Well, it's amusing, but I want to get into the subject today. Darryl, you've been a sales manager. You've been a software systems engineer and a marketing manager, and you've been all kinds of things through the years, and you've been very successful. I love it that you said that you've been hired and fired. And sometimes we get fired for the right reasons. But through the years, it was my frustration that the salespeople, no matter how good the CRM system is, the CRM system very often wasn't good enough to genuinely help the salespeople sell. It was a recording device. It's a database. It's great for forecasting. If you put a marketing automation system on it, it's great for more lead generation. And you've been the CMO for many companies. But sales engagement has fascinated me since I first ran into it 11 years ago. Can you explain what sales engagement is for the uninitiated? And then tell us why it is so important in that human element to help salespeople sell.
So why don't I flip it around? I'll tell you what the current situation is with salespeople and CRM, and then I'll explain what sales engagement is and how it addresses it. That way it'll have more context. When it comes to sales reps are somewhat of a predictable beast, if you will. And let's think about the sales reps that we know and love. Their behaviors are almost consistent from company to company to company. So most of them live in CRM. For this discussion, we'll just say it's salesforce.com, but it could be Pipedrive, it could be Dynamics, it could be Zoho, it could be a variety of CRM platforms. And when they log in the morning, they're presented typically with a list of all of their prioritized activities. It's their own personalized view, don't you know? Sorted and arranged just for them based on whatever factors and criteria you want. Maybe sort it based on lead ranking, and who's the most likely to close, etc. And the premise is that in that list, the sales rep is going to just work their way one at a time, point, click, open up the task. I have to do a phone call, or I have to do an email, and then do it, and then go and manually record what took place, and then go and generate a follow-on task for some time in the future to do something else, and go to the next item in the list. That is the general rinse and repeat process that the reps live in. But what really happens is the following, and tell me if I've struck a nerve. They log in, and they see their long list, and they start skimming it, and they're looking through that list to go, who's on there? And they go, oh, number 3 is Microsoft. Oh, number 10 is Oracle. Oh, number 25 is IBM. And they go right to Microsoft. They skip everything that preceded it. And they do their activity. And they go right to Oracle. And then they go right to IBM. So in other words, they cherry pick. They cherry pick because they believe they have a better chance of getting a big-ass deal with those accounts. And their cherry picking is often influenced by their own personal biases and experiences. So that's the first thing they do. Second thing they do is when they're in that, they open up that lead, Microsoft, they may or may not record their activity because, they're moving, happening creatures. They don't have time for all this administration work. If they record it, left a voicemail, then they have to manually make a task, and now you're reliant upon them to say, I don't want to call them back tomorrow. I got a golfing appointment, and the day after that I have a doctor's appointment. So I'm going to call them back next week. Okay, I'll make a task if they make a task based on some subjective period of time in the future. Of course, what they'll never do is they'll never say, okay, last time I called them and they didn't answer, maybe this time I should email, or maybe this time I should do a social media touch. They don't think that way. They're not wired that way. So that's their behavior. We know this is the fact because all the stats say the following. The stats say reps spend about 35% of the time actually selling. The rest of the time it's administration. Because of this list construct, the average time for a rep to follow up on a brand new list, someone filled out a form on your site in the middle of the day, when does that get onto their list, is 36 to 63 hours. So a day and a half to 2+ days. That's what we're talking about. And because they're cherry picking, upwards of 48% of leads that were in that list that were handed to them are never called. So up to, let's just say 1 in 2 leads could, at worst case, never be called. And because we relied upon them to make the next task to follow up with IBM or Microsoft again, they typically make 2, maybe 3 attempts. But statistically, you can use Bridge Group, you can use Topo, you can use Forrester and Service Decisions. You need 9.2 to 13 on average contact attempts. So this is their behavior and the consequences. I guess the one stat I forgot to mention was if you don't follow up on a new lead within 1 hour, the likelihood of you actually connecting with them drops like a rock. So that's the stats, that's the behavior, because that is how CRM is designed, and we leave it upon the sales rep to self-monitor their behaviors. So that's the starting point. Sales engagement addresses that. Before I describe what it is, I should shut up and see if you have any comments on what I've said so far.
Yes, Paul?
I just wonder, and I'm going to go back to Jim's earlier question here. I get what you're saying. Is this really something that engages the sales staff, or did they just see it as a task they have to do to make the somebody happy?
Oh, yeah. They don't like it at all. And most sales reps will do all of their actual data entry at the end of the day if they do it at all. And that's a fact. And every rep listening to this right now is actually smiling and nodding their head. I guarantee it.
Well, it's interesting. We're going to have to take a break in just a second, but it's interesting how many contact attempts are required. It used to be 6 to 8. Now it's 9.2, 13. They make 2 or 3 attempts and then drop it. Yes, 48% are never called. That number has held firm for 45 years. I've got, people say 45 years. I've got statistics going back to my very early day in marketing from 20 years before that. It's really a difficult thing. In consulting, if I got into a company and I could get 100% follow-up with the sales leads, I got a dramatic increase in sales. It was very hard to sustain. Once I left the company and got hired a new marketing sales manager, very often they went back to their old habits. Let's take a quick break here, and we're going to get back and listen some more how Darryl has solved this with a sales engagement platform. Paul, over to you.
And if you want to know more about what we're talking about today, you can check out VanillaSoft. Their core philosophy and developmental process is centered on a single concept, the power of simplicity. By focusing on simplicity, VanillaSoft allows customers to achieve increased productivity, higher contact rates that we're talking about here today, and better sales accountability. Intuitive and easy to use, the VanillaSoft sales engagement platform keeps your sales team busy and focused on engaging your leads and growing revenue. Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? Visit VanillaSoft.com to learn more. It's simple. VanillaSoft.com. So is it really that simple? Is it that simple to get not just more engagement with your customers, but more engagement with the sales staff who don't want to touch any of this stuff here?
Okay, so it is. And VanillaSoft was actually inspired, if you will, its original design, we launched around 2004, 2005, by what they'd figured out in call centers. That's the original source. We didn't create this technology, we just took it to the next level. And let me explain how it works and what sales engagement is, and it'll all make sense. So sales engagement, in its simplest sense, is just ensuring that your sales reps follow up on every single lead in the right time, less than an hour, with the right persistency, 9 attempts, 12 attempts, 15 attempts, whatever it takes, with the right cadence, 7 touches maybe in 7 days, as an example, 12 touches in 18 days, all right, across multiple channels, phone, email, social media, video, text, because you never know how your prospects want to communicate. So that's all sales engagement is. And that's it. So we mentioned it's simple. So this is how we overcome cherry picking. We overcome that speed to lead where they can wait 36 to 63 hours. We overcome that skipping of leads, which results in 48% never getting resulted. We overcome that lack of administration. We have this concept of a queue, and the queue, for those who aren't maybe international in your travels, the queue is just a fancy way of saying a lineup. All right, I'm going to get in queue at the local Burger King to get my burger. And what it does is it's constantly, it's like a spreadsheet. It's constantly recalculating to see what is the next best lead to serve this sales rep so they can follow up on it right now. So there is no list. When they sign in, literally all they have is, boom, you're calling Jim right now. And this is the 4th touch in a 12-touch cadence. And on this 4th touch, if you get a hold of him, you've previously sent him this stuff and had left these voicemails, so this is what you're going to need to say if he answers the phone. And it dials for you automatically, and away you go. And if he gets Jim, then he can start into his conversation, and it gives him the script and the talking points and the call to actions. But if he doesn't get Jim, there's a little button here. He just hits it, and it drops a voicemail, and then the next best lead is delivered. Now, a couple of things just happened what I just shared. One, the rep did not document left him a voicemail, because when he said this is a little drop down, left voicemail, and it knows. 2, the rep didn't make a task to say, I guess I should call Jim back in 4 days, 5 days, because it knows there's a 12-step cadence over 18 days. So it already knows when the next call attempt is, and it's going to get back into the queue, so it shows up 4 hours, 24 hours, 36 hours later, whenever that next touch point is. And there's no cherry picking because it's figuring it out. Now, let's say something happens really crazy, like somebody fills a form out on your website, or somebody goes to G2 and checks you out and see, what kind of product is this? What are they saying on the reviews? And you get this trigger. It could be a form from your website. It could be a social proof. It could be anything. Boom, it jumps. It doesn't start going to the back of the queue. It jumps up to the front because it's all about being responsive. Remember, you want to respond within the first hour. So the queue dynamically says that web lead that just came in, it is now the next best lead. Because statistically, we know if we respond fast, we have a good chance of connecting and having a conversation. So boom, that second one is the web form lead. When that one's done, then it's the next one, and the next one, and the next one. The rep is now productive 100% of the time. And it's telling the rep what to do. Send an email, do a social media touch, send a video, send an SMS, do a phone call, drop a voicemail. And it's plotting the cadences. The rep is not doing any administration. It's just done with disposition codes. And it's reacting in real time to your constantly changing environment. So if you're doing account-based marketing and all of a sudden IBM comes to your website and they're one of your target accounts, well, that's a trigger. Boom, they jumped at the front of the queue, and now you're calling IBM because they were on your website. So that's how it works. In its truest sense, it's just optimized to ensure your reps are engaging fast, frequently, furiously, consistently across multiple channels, phone, email, social. That's it. It's the simplest form. And the whole point really is that the rep will ultimately get a hold of them the 7th attempt, the 9th attempt, the 12th attempt. Finally, I got a hold of you. Thank you. And now we can have a conversation, as opposed to giving up after 2 or 3 attempts. So imagine you're using CRM today, and you've got $1 million pipeline, but you're leaving 48% of your leads on the table, never talking to them. Marketing's not happy with you, by the way. You're only making 2 to 3 call attempts. We'll just stop there. If I could triple your call attempts, which is the normal, then you're going to triple your sales pipeline. That 1 million becomes 3 million. You didn't hire an additional salesperson. You didn't spend an additional dollar on marketing. That's the
Does this mean, that, Darryl, that the call attempts per hour goes up?
Dramatically. You know, so a lot of reps will struggle to do 50 a day. 30 to 50 a day is probably the norm. They struggle with that. Whereas now you can do upwards of 100 to 150 a day if that's what you want. We're not saying you have to do it, but yeah, the call attempts goes up dramatically.
Now, you mentioned 45%, 48% are never contacted, which has been very, very consistent. I found in research and the 2 books I've written on sales lead management, 45% of the leads will turn into a sale for someone. If you don't even contact 48% of them, you've cut your sales potential in half or greater. Now, you mentioned on your website much less lead decay, which makes sense. Can you explain that?
Sure. I mean, the classic sense of lead decay is what we talked about earlier a little bit when we were talking about speed to lead, right? If you can respond within an hour, it's hot, it's happening, the chances of connecting are great. The longer you wait, the older that lead gets before you follow up with them, the less likely of having a successful connection. And if you do connect, there's a strong chance that the prospect, the lead, will not recall why you were calling them. They don't recall filling out a form. They don't recall seeing you at a trade show. If you need further proof of this, imagine the days before COVID when we used to have trade shows and people would go and collect all the business cards and sales would finally call them 2 weeks later. And they would call the first, batch, maybe 100. And then they turn on marketing and say, these leads suck. Well, the reason the leads suck is because you waited 2 weeks, not because marketing did a bad job. I mean, marketing might have done a bad job. Hey, I'm not saying they're off the hook. But waiting 2 weeks, which is what we are all guilty of doing, that's lead decay. And that's the cause and effect of having a really low connection rate and response rate.
I used to call it sales leakage, and lead decay is great. With this pandemic that's going on, salespeople aren't traveling like they used to. Nobody wants to see them. The outside salespeople have become inside salespeople, and they should be serviced by this kind of program in the same manner that the inside salespeople have. Do you agree?
Not only do I agree, it's been actually really interesting to watch. So when it first hit, the pandemic hit, we had everybody go to a work-from-home model. So all of a sudden we had this massive influx of people they needed soft phones, VoIP-based phones for their people who are now remote before they had handsets. So that was a big shift. Management had to figure out how to make sure the activity was going on. On CRM, legacy stuff, they had a real hard time managing that because they're out of sight, out of mind. Can't listen, can't watch. But thus you can listen, you can eavesdrop in real time, you can look at the recordings, but you can also see the activity and the dials and the emails, whatever, in real time. So you can see the activities are happening because it's always feeding the reps. The other thing that's really happened is interesting. We'll take some of our industries like insurance is a good example, where they would go to corporate sites and they would say, okay, I'm here at IBM, and I'm going to go talk to all the employees because IBM's brought me in, and I'm going to hook you up with life insurance. And you get an IBM rate. Here we go. Well, now there's nobody at those offices. So that's just one example. There's a ton of industries like that where they've had to learn to become inside sales reps and not do face-to-face meetings. So that's huge.
That is really interesting. It occurred to me that if this product were used by more people, my life as a sales consultant and most sales consultants would be cut considerably shorter, and that expense would go away in companies because this takes away the baseball bat from the sales manager, puts it into the software that the salespeople contend with and live with and use, and the sales will increase without that sales consultant coming through the door and putting people through all kinds of acrobatics. Paul's motioning to me that we've got to get ready for Azure Sales Sense coming up. Darryl, you've been really great today to explain this. We really appreciate it. How does someone reach you?
Just go to Google, type in Praill, Praill. You're going to see my name everywhere. LinkedIn, I'm on all the time. Twitter, go to darrylpraill.com. There's no shortage of ways. Just Google Praill, you'll find me. You're
big time on LinkedIn. Hey, you're having a sales conference coming up, aren't you?
Well, we were having a sales conference coming up, and of course, the COVID, that's not going to happen anymore. So, but we're doing a gazillion virtual events. Just, reach out to me or go to the VanillaSoft.com website, and you'll see it all right there.
Darryl Praill, CRO, VanillaSoft. Very, very informative today. Thank you very much for your time. I know you're in big demand.
Thank you
All
so
over
much,
to you
guys.
for Azure Sales Sense. And then Matt Hines, Darryl's favorite marketing company, following up at 10:30, also live.
been listening to another great example of why you should tune in each and every week to the SLMA radio show. Brought to you by the good folks at the Sales Lead Management Association. For at-work listeners like you here on the Funnel Radio channel.
Imagine buying a newspaper and discovering that the news you're reading is 6 months old. There isn't much that stays the same for 6 months. And the same thing goes for background checks. In a time when so much outdated information is being passed around, it's good to know that People G2 offers something different. At People G2, we provide today's intelligence, not yesterday's news. Our value-added approach offers you a fully FCRA-compliant solution that includes up-to-the-minute information. By combining industry-leading technology with old-school human investigation, People G2 is able to give you information that is accurate right now, delivered quickly through our online system, or integrated with your HR system. So ask yourself, are you comfortable working with old news, or are you ready for a different kind of background check company? Visit peopleg2.com or call 800-630-2880. That's 800-630-2880 or peopleg2.com.
Richard Franzi is a highly sought-after keynote speaker on topics of interest to CEOs of middle firms across North America. Richard's talks include Killing Cats Leads to Rats, a fascinating look at how unintended consequences of CEOs' decisions impact their firm's performance. Your Gray Matter Matters, which explores how a CEO's mindset can differentiate a middle market firm and define its culture. Richard delivers talks to a variety of audiences, ranging from executive team retreats to keynotes in front of hundreds of CEOs. To learn more about his talks, visit criticalmassforbusiness.com and select the contact page or call 949-887-4104.
Welcome, everybody. Time for another episode of Asher Sales Sense. Brought to you by Asher Strategies, the only global sales training company that integrates leading sales methodologies and the latest neuroscience studies into a simple and repeatable